December the 3rd, 2023. Guys, you're looking at information that may be the trigger to getting the entire Western and world and Europe involved in something we thought maybe our attention was pulled to the Middle East for a reason. And right now, there's some more articles, and let me pull this down just a moment. We're at warnews247.gr because it's in Greek. But there's all the information here in these bottom videos is that Ukraine is over. Here's the head of NATO saying it's over. They're calling in a lot of extra help, guys, right now in a last-minute desperation to set up some walls and defensive positions. And the walls are being funded in whatever the positions are trying to put up by us. They can have a wall. Anyway, this article may be why our attention's been diverted. The fateful decision. NATO imposes a naval blockade on the Gulf of Finland and Kaliningrad, which is Russian. 70,000 NATO troops around the Russian enclave. It says the Baltic on track for full-scale conflict. NATO simulated occupation of Russian territories. As it's, this is not going to be refined to the Baltic region. I guarantee you that. The Russian Navy, the Air Force, and the Army have been put on red alert in the Kaliningrad region as Moscow prepares for a full-scale conflict in the Baltic. The Russians note that it is very likely that the new front will open even within 2024. So we're within 3 weeks, basically. A total of 70,000 troops are located around the perimeter of the Russian enclave in the Baltic. Remember, Kaliningrad, and we're going to look at the maps, is not connected directly to Russia. And remember the Suwalki corridor? We're going to look at that. The Gulf of Finland is a gulf of the Baltic Sea that stretches between Finland and Estonia to the city of St. Petersburg. Events in the Baltic and around Kaliningrad are developing in such a way that the North Atlantic Alliance, listen, is gradually blocking the Russian enclave. That's a huge naval base for Russia. It's a beautiful place. NATO is following the strategy deliberately and step by step, says the first Russian report on the developments in the region. Guys, this is going to be, they're about to surround and try to attack our corner part of Russia proper. And it's a naval base area. And we're being pushed to almost total worldwide destruction here, guys. If you think about what they're doing, and if you look into the art of war, there's a statement in there, I think I've said it before, that an evil leader or emperor will destroy his whole nation, even if all he can do is rule over the ashes before he gives it up, before anything else. Right now, that's on a planetary scale. In June, the U.S. deployed 6 nuclear subs armed with ballistic missiles to the Atlantic, giving Washington an advantage over Moscow in the event of a nuclear war. I don't really understand that statement quite because I think it's a pretty even chessboard as far as what's underwater for many nations. In addition, the West involved the Baltic countries. Latvia has announced the need to close the Baltic Sea to Russian ships. We're about to go to a map. Denmark has announced the closure of the straits to Russian ships, and the Estonians, the Finns, and the Norwegians are beginning to block their border points with Russia. At the same time, NATO countries are increasing their presence in the waters of the Baltic Sea. All this makes Kaliningrad's connection with mainland Russia very vulnerable. The Baltic Fleet has limited capabilities to counter the Western Bloc powers. Whoever's writing this information, guys, and again, it's warnews247.gr, has highly estimated what Russia has, I think. In addition, the head of the German Defense Ministry, Boris Pistorius, announced the dispatch of a tank brigade to Lithuania to block the area. Now let's go to this map. Now this is Google Maps. It'll work for what we're doing here. Looking at the Bering Strait, this is Alaska. Here is the British Columbia, Washington, Oregon, and California. Now right here in part of the Bering Strait, guys, it's not very far between Alaska and Russia. Right there, it's Kamchatka, part of that section. You can look at this, again, cities on both sides of this. A lot of this is native territories, Native American territories. But let me back it out again. So if you think you have an advantage by putting nuclear submarines in the Atlantic when there could be anything Russia wanted right here on this tip, again, here's Alaska, Russia, then you're not only underestimating how close they are, and no one's underestimating anything. I think we're being pushed to a world catastrophe. But everything's being set up. Again, let's back this out. There, Russia has a lot of ships, bases up in the north. And then just look at this. Think about what we're dealing with here. Russia's very large. Mongolia, Kazakhstan. Look at that. China's under there. But Russia's a vast territory. Pull this up. Here's Moscow. Now, the countries that are about or have already started the blockade, let me pause this one moment and expand the map. There, here's Moscow again. This would be on their western side of Russia. You've got Ukraine here, so you can see that Ukraine is kind of a smaller territory, one of the larger, or if not the largest, nation in the European Union. And they're really, I guess they're part of the European Union. But what is about to happen is the EU, is what I call Eurocide, is about to do something very stupid. Again, Russia's vast, and they've come in. Right now, they're almost about to have to evacuate. The UN has come in and said, you might as well give it up. And then there's some desperate people in certain nations, both there and in the West, that, let's pump some more money into there. Let's make sure that we get all the taxpayer dollars, push it into these areas, and then who knows really where the money ends up. But the problem is something we've talked about before. Now, here's Ukraine, Belarus. Again, the Russian border goes up all the way to the east of Latvia, Estonia, Finland. These are the nations that are talking about this blockade. Lithuania. Poland is big time pushing it. Germany is pushing it, except they said they only have enough ammunition in stock if they were attacked for 2 days. Very similar, probably, if we knew the truth in a lot of places. Then you're not very far to the UK, Ireland, Scotland's up north of there. Think about this. Now let's go back to the problem. Russia's enclave is what they call it, of Kaliningrad is surrounded, 70,000 troops. What do they think they're going to do? This is what we're dealing with here. Kaliningrad's here. Beautiful, beautiful place. You look at it, looks like some of the best old buildings, canals, boats, things like that. It's beautiful architecture there. But this is Russian. Let me back it up a little bit. And remember the videos that I've done where there's a corridor that connects, let me back up, Belarus, which is Russian friendly. Russian troops are here. They have full passage rights up to this point. And the Suwalki corridor, and this is named after this town, I think it's about maybe 45 or 50 miles through here, has been surrounded. And they're thinking they're going to cut off Russia, and they've been there doing this for a while, from Kaliningrad while it's being basically surrounded, and they want to lock in the ports, military ports. There's a picture right there, pull it up. That's a type of architecture I'm talking about. It's a beautiful place. It's Russian. So they think now, in the panic, after the disaster that has wiped out the money and the military assets for many nations around the planet, many nations except China, that well, we had all their attention over in Ukraine. Now we've got their attention in the Middle East, and we're going to surround Russia. Now, that's only a plan of destruction. And is that what they want, guys? But again, Lithuania is here. Belarus is friendly, but Poland is here, a massive place that has no good intentions about this. I do not think Russia is going to allow anybody to block their port for very long, and they're talking about all of this area, guys. And then let's, as a bigger picture, again, Russia's huge. Let me pull this back around. Plenty of assets, and so the entire section of Europe, including the UK and Ireland, would fit into maybe a third of Russia. But Russia's military and their nuclear capabilities and their hypersonic rockets are so powerful. They've warned it. Remember, they told the UK, if you keep pushing this, we're going to end up putting you in the ocean. Well, now this is what I think we have been not shown until now. But there's a lot of buildup. Let's read the amount of troops and things like that. But this is what we're dealing with again. How will it begin will Russia try to come in? And I think this is what would be happening if this happens, is that the Suwalki corridor, guys, will be pushed in with tanks and all. But at the same time, Russia has such a massive air force and missile capability that some people are going to get hurt doing this. You know, think about it. Right here, Suwalki corridor, they'll come in out of Belarus. Both sides will be, since they've already got naval vessels in here, and where do you think some of the U.S. assets really are? They've got here setting up for blockades. So the tank battle, will begin here, land battle, whatever it is, backed by the Air Force, and at the same time, the Baltic Sea, will become radioactive because there's going to be a lot of damaged ships forcing this blockade. I'm not choosing sides. I'm looking at what is going to happen. In my opinion, right now, Ukraine is almost defeated. Basically, they are, and they're actually talking about getting Zelensky out of there right away and making some kind of deal. But I think Russia's had enough to where Ukraine will become Russian. And so the NATO in the West has failed in blocking Russia in this area surrounding Belarus. They failed. It's all coming back. So and again, that was one war that they wanted to win. But at the same time, they had been building up assets all through this area to take out Kaliningrad. That will not happen without worldwide conflict. Now, who has not, as far as we know, sent any money or troops or weapons into Ukraine because of this conflict? China. Now, of course, Russia's put money and troops and massive weaponry into this. They had to. Many people will argue with that, but they saw that the presence in Ukraine was a threat to their border, especially when it was run by NATO, backed by the West, more than likely a high percentage. Russia will not go along with the New World Order in any form or fashion, and I can't stand that, guys. Again, I'm not choosing sides. I'm telling you what I see. The rest of this evil empire, not here, but around the planet, cannot stand the fact that Russia will not go along with it. And Russia is powerful, and they have the chance to pull back on some of this stuff. And maybe it will wake the world up to who's really in control, which is our Father in heaven. And he will use armies that he chooses, and he will build them up in advance as he chooses. And people talk about technology that comes from above that the evil angels use. And we've seen it from Genesis, the book of Enoch, all of that. But if you don't think God can put some information into whoever he's using in their technology and the help with that, strategy and weather, you think that man can control the weather, you're right. but not like our Father in heaven can. Let's finish that article. Let me start right here again. It says, in addition, the West involved the Baltic countries. Latvia had announced the need to close the Baltic. See the Russian ships. Denmark has announced the closure of the straits to Russian ships. The Estonians, the Finns, and the Norwegians are beginning to block their border points with Russia. At the same time, NATO countries are increasing their presence in the waters of the Baltic Sea. All this makes Kaliningrad's connection with mainland Russia very vulnerable. The Baltic fleet has limited capabilities to counter the Western Bloc powers. Again, this is a very, I think, either naive article as far as what they're, not the information, but when they express what they think is happening, because when they say the Baltic fleet has limited capabilities, guys, they're protected by Mother Russia, their Mother Russia. It's going to be devastating. The Baltic will become in a very rough place to be, and that's going to involve everything. And like you saw the map all the way over through Europe, which is nothing compared to Russia, and especially after they've been deceived and tricked by their leaders into sending all their ammo over there into Ukraine. And God knows where that ended up. But Ukraine is on the run. It says, in addition, the head of the German Defense Ministry, Boris Pistorius, announced the dispatch of a tank brigade to Lithuania to block the area. NATO simulates a blockade of the Gulf of Finland and the occupation of Russian territories. The Russians also note that the Freezing Winds 23, that's the name of this exercise, Freezing Winds 23, the scenarios leave no room for misinterpretation of what is coming to the region. They're not stupid. They've been watching this for a long time, and a lot of us have wondered, Russia probably could have taken Ukraine out pretty easily all at once. A lot of people would have been hurt, and but they could have ended it quickly. But they've been very reserved, in my opinion. They've lost a lot of troops. So has NATO in the West lost a lot of troops in Ukraine. Now they're down to, I think, mostly women and children fighting, and that's about to be over. The armed forces of the member countries of the North Atlantic Alliance have started large-scale exercises, codenamed Freezing Winds 23. The exercises are led by a new member of NATO, Finland, not without reason, since they practice actions against Russia in the northern direction. A group of troops from the NATO countries, numbering at least 5,000 military personnel from different states, was deployed in the northwestern border of the Russian Federation. 30 ships and 20 aircraft are participating in the exercise. Again, I think it's a total of 70,000 personnel. Finland has effectively shut down land communications with Russia. Estonia and Norway are preparing to follow suit. Apparently, these measures are aimed at continuing the implementation of Western plans to block the Kaliningrad Special Region, KRR, the Russians say. In addition, the situation is seriously aggravated by the statements of Copenhagen about the imminent closures of the waterways for Russian ships, as well as the buildup of Russian forces and the upcoming NATO exercises in the area. It is important to consider what is around the Kaliningrad Special Region. NATO naval forces, U.S. units numbering about 20,000 military personnel. Look at that, guys. 30,000 Polish soldiers and 10,000 Lithuanians have already been deployed. Also, the 42nd Tank Brigade, Lithuania, with 5,000 military personnel, will move to the Suwalki corridor, just like I was telling you about. Thus, the total number of the NATO Armada will reach about 70,000 soldiers, ready to occupy Kaliningrad and its surroundings. It is likely that in the first stage, NATO will try to destroy the forces of the Baltic Fleet, the air defense systems, Russian Air Force, and important infrastructure. This will be followed by an attack by ground units from the north and south in order to prevent a breakout from the east for the group forces to liberate the blockaded enclave. Currently, the 12th and the 16th Polish divisions located near Kaliningrad are being reinforced. The Poles get K2 tanks, K9, and KRAB self-propelled guns. They've got plenty of weaponry. Major NATO exercises will take place in February, March 2024, during which Western troops will conduct combat coordination. Guys, there's enough conflict that you could trigger this well before that date, but that is not very far away. Everything's being put in place. As the plans to capture Kaliningrad are likely to be implemented in order to eliminate the threat to the northeastern side of the alliance, the Russians conclude. For the first time, they will also give a date. And that's why I was showing you all of Europe there, guys, right there on the border, how this will be effective. That many nations are going to, if that many nations work together for this blockade, that many nations will suffer. And every nation is in that area, I think, is NATO just about. But it says for the first time, the Russians also give a date. And here's a map, guys, a very close up. It's in Russian, but these are the areas right here. And this is Kaliningrad. Here's the Suwalki corridor going right here to Belarus. And here are the 70,000 troops. That not all the 70,000, some are on the ships, but here are the surrounding forces of a Russian state and a Russian military port. Think about that. You don't think that would trigger something, event? And you got to realize that's what the evil demons want. Complete destruction. Guys, we're watching this. Pay very close attention to it. Not many people want to talk about it. They're so involved with the Middle East. And even though Ukraine is fading, there's still information there that would be important, because NATO would like to come in there and take Western Ukraine, I think. Force Zelensky out, force a peace treaty, or try to force a peace treaty with Russia to maintain as much land as they can to do their evil deeds in the future. But we're watching it, guys. You watch it. It's heads up. Be safe.